Let's be honest for a second. Don't we all drive ourselves a little crazy sometimes trying to find the perfect time management system? You know what I mean, right? The one that's finally going to make us into productivity superstars. No more missed deadlines. No more feeling overwhelmed by to-do lists. Well, get ready for a different kind of approach in this deep dive. We're diving into Two Awesome Hours by Josh Davis, and let me tell you, this book really flips the script.
It does, and you hit the nail on the head with that different kind of approach comment. What makes this book stand out is that it's not just some productivity guru preaching at you.
Mm.
Josh Davis actually has a PhD in psychology from Columbia, so he's coming at this from a neuroscience perspective.
Okay, now that definitely caught my attention. So instead of the usual work smarter, not harder stuff, Davis is digging into how our brains really tick throughout the day.
Exactly. It's less about magically finding an extra hour in your schedule and way more about making the most of the hours you've already got.
Love it. All right, so let's unlock the secrets to those 2 awesome hours. What's the first strategy Davis lays out for us? All right, so you're telling me the secret to unlocking those 2 awesome hours is all about pausing. That sounds almost too easy.
I know, right? But here's the thing. It's not just about any old pause. It's about what Davis calls pause points. And honestly, this idea really clicked for me because it reminded me of something I read in that book, Peak, about deliberate practice.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It was all about how top performers use those little breaks to their advantage, right? Like even tiny pauses can help you reflect and adjust what you're doing.
Exactly. It's about being intentional instead of just rushing from one thing to the next on autopilot. And that's what Davis is getting at with pause points. Think about it. How often are you really present during those little transitions throughout your day?
Okay, I see what you mean. Like, am I really paying attention when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning or just going through the motions?
Exactly. Or how about when you're scrolling through your phone between meetings? Are you actually taking a break or just kind of zoning out?
Oh, wow. Yeah, guilty as charged.
Yeah.
So you're saying those little moments, those transitions, they're actually like prime time for hitting the reset button.
They can be, yeah. Instead of letting your brain go on autopilot, those pause points become these mini opportunities to make a conscious choice about where you focus your attention next.
So it's almost like a mental workout,
Right.
like training your brain to pause effectively.
I like that. And Davis actually gives this super simple action step. At the end of a task, physically stand up. Like, get out of your chair, take a few deep breaths, and then decide what you're going to work on next.
Huh. I can see how that would make a difference. Just that little bit of physical movement, it sort of shifts your energy, right?
Right. It's like a signal to your brain and body that it's time to switch gears.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got pause points. That's strategy number one. What's next on the list for unlocking those awesome hours?
Well, this one might sound kind of obvious, but Davis really dives into the science behind it, and it's all about working with your natural energy levels throughout the day. He calls it riding the brain energy wave.
Okay, I think I know what you're getting at. We all have those times when we're super focused and other times when we can barely string a sentence together.
Exactly. But too often, we try to fight against those natural ebbs and flows instead of planning around them.
Oh, tell me about it. Those afternoons when I try to tackle a complex task after a carb-heavy lunch,
Uh,
forget about it. My brain is basically offline.
you're preaching to the choir.
Mm.
I'm the same way. And that's why Davis says it's so important to become aware of your own personal energy patterns. Like, when do you feel most alert and focused? When do you tend to hit a slump?
That's a good question. I've never really tracked it that closely.
It can be really eye-opening. Davis actually gives an example of his friend who minimizes decisions the day before a big presentation. Like, he'll even lay out his clothes and prep breakfast the night before.
Wow, that's next level. I'm lucky if I remember to bring my laptop home. But I get it. It's all about being strategic so you can conserve mental energy for when you really need it. Okay, so maybe I need to start paying more attention to my own energy levels. But what about distractions? Like, is it even possible to have 2 awesome hours when you're constantly getting sidetracked by emails and social media?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And this is where Davis's approach really surprised me. He actually says we need to befriend our distractible brains.
Wait, seriously, so you're telling me my tendency to get sucked into a YouTube rabbit hole while writing a report is normal?
He says it's not just normal, it's actually how our brains are wired. Davis even links it back to our ancestors who needed to be constantly aware of their surroundings for survival.
Okay, so it's like a survival mechanism.
Exactly. Our brains are designed to scan for new and interesting information, but instead of trying to eliminate distractions altogether, which is pretty much impossible, Davis says we need to learn to manage them more effectively.
That makes sense. So how do we do that?
Well, he talks about two main strategies. The first one is called active distraction, and it's actually about giving yourself permission to take short, deliberate breaks to do something completely different.
So instead of feeling guilty about stepping away from my desk for 5 minutes, I should actually be scheduling those breaks into my day.
Exactly. It's like hitting the refresh button on your brain. Those short breaks can help you come back to your work feeling more focused and energized.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And, I have noticed sometimes when I hit a wall with a task, just taking a quick break to walk the dog or grab a cup of coffee can really help shake things loose. It's like that change of scenery, that mental break, allows the solution to just pop into my head.
Precisely. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your focus is to shift your attention to something else for a little bit.
That's wild. And I'm guessing the other strategy you mentioned, attention awareness, is a little more about working with those distractions instead of just trying to shut them out entirely.
You got it. It's about noticing where your mind wanders without judgment. Like, instead of getting frustrated with yourself for daydreaming during a meeting, what if you actually tried to listen to those thoughts and see where they lead?
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So we've covered pause points, riding the energy wave, and even learning to work with our distractible brains. What else does Josh Davis have for us? Are there any more secrets to unlocking those 2 awesome hours?
Well, remember how we were talking about those afternoon energy slumps and sugar cravings? Turns out that's a perfect segue into Davis's next strategy, which focuses on the connection between what we eat, how we move, and how our brains function.
Okay, I'm intrigued. We are talking about fuel for the brain, right?
Yeah.
Even with the best time management strategies, our brains still need the right kind of energy to perform at their best.
You nailed it. And while we've all heard that what we eat affects how we feel, Davis really breaks down the science behind it, especially when it comes to blood sugar and focus. Have you ever noticed that after a sugary snack, you get a quick burst of energy, but then you crash hard?
Oh, absolutely. It's like my brain hits a wall.
That's your blood sugar spiking and then plummeting. And those dramatic swings directly impact your concentration and productivity. It's not just about avoiding sugar, though. It's about keeping those glucose levels stable throughout the day.
Okay, so how do we do that? Are you suggesting we all become marathon runners who only eat kale smoothies?
No way. Davis actually emphasizes sustainability over intensity. He's a big fan of what he calls light movement. Think taking a quick walk, doing some stretches, just getting your blood flowing throughout the day. And when it comes to food, he recommends smaller, more frequent meals instead of those 3 big meals a day. The idea is to give your brain a steady stream of energy rather than those energy roller coasters.
Got it. So small, sustainable changes. That feels way more doable than suddenly trying to become a health nut overnight.
Exactly. It's about working with your body, not against it. And speaking of working with our bodies, what about our work environment? The physical space where we're trying to achieve these 2 awesome hours.
Yeah, good point. What has Davis had to say about that? I'm always curious about those little environmental hacks that can boost productivity.
Well, he talks about both noise and light, which I found super interesting. For example, when it comes to noise, it might surprise you to learn that it's not so much about eliminating all noise, but more about minimizing those disruptive sounds.
Oh, interesting. So my dream of having a soundproof office might be a little overkill.
Maybe. Davis explains that our brains are actually pretty good at adapting to a consistent level of background noise, like what you'd find in a busy coffee shop. It's those sudden jarring noises that really throw us off track. Like a phone ringing out of nowhere or someone interrupting your flow.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like you're laser focused on a task and then boom, someone's loud conversation totally derails your train of thought. So it seems like minimizing distractions, especially those unexpected ones, is key.
Yes, absolutely. And then there's light. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Have you heard about blue light and productivity?
Oh yeah. Isn't blue light supposed to be bad for us? Like, I try to avoid screens before bed because of that whole blue light thing.
Yes. It's true that blue light from our devices can mess with our sleep if we're exposed to it too close to bedtime. But get this, during the day, blue and white light can actually make us more alert.
Whoa, really? That's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't feel bad about basking in the glow of my computer screen all day.
Well, everything in moderation. But it makes sense when you think about how natural daylight actually has a high amount of blue light.
Ah, that's true. So maybe Opening up the blinds and letting in some natural light could actually help boost our focus.
Exactly. And if you're hitting that afternoon slump, sometimes even just adjusting your screen settings to a cooler, bluer light can help.
Wow, I am learning so many good tips today.
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing about Light Davis also talks about the benefits of dim lighting for creativity, right? Like, what's the science behind that?
It's pretty cool. Dim lighting tends to have this calming effect on us. It helps us relax and feel less inhibited, which is really helpful for creative thinking. And when we're relaxed, our minds are free to wander and make new connections. And that's where those aha moments happen.
So, if I'm ever feeling stuck creatively, maybe I should just dim the lights and see what happens. I love how Davis challenges our assumptions about productivity.
Me too. And as we wrap up our deep dive into 2 awesome hours, that's one of the biggest takeaways I hope you'll remember. It's not about finding more time, but about optimizing the time we have by working with our bodies and our environments.
It's about quality over quantity when it comes to time.
Right.
Right? Instead of trying to cram more into our already packed schedules, it's about figuring out how to make the most of those precious few hours when our brains are firing on all cylinders.
Yes, exactly. It's about becoming the conductor of our own internal orchestras, understanding when to crescendo and when to let the music breathe.
That's such a great way to put it. So, to all our listeners out there, we challenge you to think about how you can use these strategies to unlock your own 2 awesome hours. What could you achieve if you designed your day around those peak performance times? Think about it, and until next time, happy optimizing.